A chemist, a biologist, and an electrical engineer were on death row waiting to go in the electric chair, and the chemist was brought forward, the very first one. Do you have anything you want to say? Asked the executioner, and he straps him in. No, replied the chemist, and the executioner flicked the switch and nothing happened, and under state law, if it fails, the prisoner's to be released, so the chemist was released. Then the biologist was brought. Do you have anything you want to say? No, just get on with it. Executioner flicks the switch again, nothing happens, so the biologist is released. Then the electrical engineer is brought forward. Do you have anything you want to say? Yes, says the engineer. If you swap the red and the blue wires, you might make this thing work.
Oh, okay.
The minister told his congregation, next week I plan to preach about the sin of lying. To help you understand my sermon, I want you all to read Mark 17. So the following Sunday, as he prepared to deliver the sermon, the minister asked for a show of hands. He wanted to know how many people actually read Mark 17, and every hand went up. And the minister smiled and he said, Mark has only 16 chapters. I will now proceed with my sermon about lying. This pastor goes to a nursing home first time to visit an elderly parishioner, and as he's sitting there, he notices a bowl of peanuts beside the bed, and he takes one, and as they continue the conversation, he can't help himself. He eats one after another of her peanuts, and by the time they're through, the bowl's empty. He says, look, I'm so sorry, Mrs. Jones. I seem to have eaten all of your peanuts. She goes, oh, that's okay. They would have just sat there anyway without my teeth. All I can do is suck all that chocolate off and then put them back in the bowl. Don't worry. This older gentleman goes in a bar, hears the other patrons discussing ups and downs of marriage, and next week my wife and I will celebrate our 50th anniversary, he tells them. Wow, that's great. What's your secret for a long and happy marriage? One guy asked. Well, you gotta do nice things for your wife. Such as? Well, for our 25th anniversary, I took her to Italy. Wow, that's nice. What are you going to do for your 50th? I think I'm going to go back and visit her. One Sunday, sitting on the side of the highway waiting to catch speeding drivers, a state police officer sees a car going along at like 22 miles an hour. He thinks, this is just as dangerous as a speeder, so he turns on his lights and pulls the driver. Approaching the car, he sees there's 5 old ladies, 2 in the front, 3 in the back, wide-eyed, white as ghosts. The driver's obviously confused, and she says, Officer, I don't understand. I was doing exactly the speed limit. I always go to the speed limit. What seems to be the problem? Ma'am, the officer says, you weren't speeding, but you should know driving slower than the speed limit can also be a danger to other drivers. Slower than the speed limit? No, sir, I was doing the speed limit exactly, 22 miles an hour. She was very proud of herself. And the state police officer, trying to contain a chuckle, says, 22 is your route number, not your speed limit, honey. Embarrassed. The woman was embarrassed. She grins and thanks him for pointing out her error. He says, ma'am, before I let you go, I got to ask, is everybody in this car okay? These women seem all shaken up. They haven't muttered a single peep the whole time. Oh, they'll be all right in a minute, Ossifer. We just got off Route 119.
Okay.
Yeah, I read the expression, revenge is a dish best served cold. And then I read one that said, revenge is sweet. And so I came to the conclusion, revenge is ice cream. I'm going to send some. The U.S. Navy destroyer stops 4 Mexicans in a rowboat rowing toward California, and the captain gets on the loudhailer and shouts, Ahoy, small craft, where are you headed? One of the Mexicans puts down his oar, stands up and says, we are invading the United States of America to reclaim the territory taken by the USA during the 1800s. The entire crew of the destroyer doubled over in laughter, and when the captain was finally able to catch his breath, he gets back on the loudhailer and says, just the 4 of you? And the same Mexican stands up again and goes, no, we're the last 4. The rest are already there. Daughter says, I don't like the boy you found for me. His teeth aren't in order. He looks ugly when he smiles. Mother says, Don't worry about that. He's not going to be smiling after he marries you.
Yeah.
A guy gets stopped by the bouncer at a nightclub. You have to wear a tie, the bouncer says. The guy goes back to his car, finds a set of jumper cables, ties them around his neck, and goes back to the club. Well, bouncer lets him in, but he says, I'm going to be watching you. Better not start anything.
That's great.
On Sunday, a pastor asked his congregation to consider giving a little extra in the offering plate, and he said that whoever gave the most would be able to pick out 3 hymns. So after the offering plates were passed, the pastor noticed someone had contributed a $100 bill, and he was so grateful he wanted to personally thank the generous person before the whole congregation. This quiet, elderly widow shyly raised her hand. Pastor asked her to come to the front, and slowly she crept up to the pastor. He told her how wonderful it was she gave so much and asked her to pick out 3 hymns, and her eyes got all bright, and she pointed to the 3 handsomest men and says, I'll take him, and him, and him. At 2 eggs, they're kissing on a bed, and the female egg says, I have to go change. I'll be back in a minute. 5 minutes later, the female egg walked out in a slinky negligee, rubbing her hands up and down her smooth oval-shaped body. Instantly, the male egg slapped his hands to the top of his head, covering it completely. What are you doing? The female egg asked. And he said, the last time I was this hard, someone cracked me on the head with a spoon. Punk rocker with acute appendicitis needs immediate surgery. As the nurse preps the punk rocker, she finds that her pubic hair is dyed green with a tattoo that says, keep off the grass. After the operation, the punk rocker wakes up to find a small note taped on her belly. Well, sorry, we had to mow that lawn. This mom visits her son for dinner. He lives with his girl roommate. During the course of the meal, the mom can't help but notice how pretty the roommate was. She was really suspicious of her relationship, and this even made her more curious. So over the course of the evening, while watching the two interact, she started to wonder if there was more between him and the roommate than met the eye. Now, reading his mom's thoughts, the son said, I know what you must be thinking, but I assure you, we're just roommates. Well, about a week later, his roommate comes to him. She says, ever since your mom came to dinner, I've been unable to find the silver plate. You don't think she took it, do you? He said, well, I don't doubt it, but I'll email her just to be sure. He sat down and wrote, Dear Mom, I'm not saying you did take the silver plate from my house. I'm not saying you did not take the silver plate, but that remains. It's been missing ever since you were here for dinner. Love, your son. Well, several hours later, he got an email from Mom, and it said, Dear son, I'm not saying you do sleep with your roommate, and I'm saying you don't sleep with her, but the fact remains, if she was sleeping in her own bed, she would have found the silver plate by now under her pillow. Love, Mom. That actually happened to me in real life with my mother and my sister and my ex-friend from high school. Reverend Smith visits Mrs. Jenkins, one of the elder parishioners in his church, and Reverend Smith notices that on top of her organ there's a bowl with a condom floating in water in it. And he's like, what is that? Oh, Reverend Smith, I found that lying in the street corner, and the package said, if you put it on your organ and keep it wet, it'll prevent disease. And frankly, I haven't been sick all year. This milkman gets an order for 45 pints of milk, and he's puzzled. So he asks the customer, is this a mistake? And when he knocks on the door, the woman's wearing just a bath towel, and she confirms she does want 45 pints. Milk baths are good for your skin, she says. Oh, well, okay, the milkman says. Do you need it pasteurized? She says, oh, no, only up to my tits will be fine. This man goes to his doctor after he lost a lot of weight. I felt great, but I got a problem, Doc. I was so fat beforehand, my skin stretched. It stayed that long. Is there anything you can give me? Short of plastic surgery, there's only one alternative. Please take off your clothes. Man strips down. Doctor pulls all his skin upwards and ties it in a ball over his head. But, Doc, now my navel's in the middle of my forehead. Well, that's true, says the doctor. And you should see what you got for a collar and a tie there.
Oh, that's good.
This old woman goes to the doctor for a checkup. She says, Doc, I haven't had sex for years now, and I was wondering, how can I increase my husband's sex drive? The doctor says, have you tried to give him Viagra? Lady frowns and goes, Doc, I can't even get him to take aspirin when he's got a headache. Doctor says, well, crush this Viagra in a powder, and when you're giving him coffee, stir it in. He won't even notice a thing. Weeks later, the old lady comes back, and Doctor says, how'd it go? Terrible, Doctor, terrible. I did like you said, and he got up and he ripped his clothes off right there. We made love on the table, and it was the best sex I had in 25 years. Well, what are you talking about? What's the problem? Well, she says I can never go to that diner again.
A lot of people lost their food that night.
Dear husband, I'm writing you this letter to tell you I'm leaving you for good. I've been a good woman to you for 7 years, and I have nothing to show for it. These last 2 weeks have been hell. Your boss called to tell me you'd quit your job today, and that was the last straw. Last week you came home and didn't notice I got my hair and nails done, cooked your favorite meal, and even wore a brand new negligee. You came home and ate in 2 minutes and went straight to sleep after watching the game. You don't tell me you love me anymore, you don't touch me or anything. Either you're cheating or you don't love me anymore. Whatever the case is, I am gone. P.S. If you're trying to find me, don't. Your brother and I are moving away to West Virginia together. Have a great life, your ex-wife. Dear ex-wife, nothing's made my day more than receiving your letter. It's true you and I have been married for 7 years. Although a good woman is a far cry from what you've been. I watch sports so much to try to drown out your constant nagging. Too bad that don't work. I did notice when you cut off all your hair last week, first thing that came to my mind was you look just like a man. My mother raised me not to say anything if you can't say nothing nice. When you cooked my favorite meal, you must have got me confused with my brother, because I stopped eating pork 7 years ago. I went to sleep on you and you had that new negligee because the price tag was still on it. I prayed. It was a coincidence that my brother had just borrowed $50 from me that morning and your negligee was $49.99. And after all this, I still loved you and I felt we could work it out. So when I discovered I'd hit the lotto for $10 million, I quit my job and bought us 2 tickets to Jamaica. But when I got home, you was gone. Everything happens for a reason, I reckon. Hope you have the fulfilling life you always wanted. My lawyer said that with your letter that you wrote, you won't get a dime from me, so take care. P.S. I don't know if I ever told you this, but Carl, my brother, was born Carla. I hope that's not a problem for you. Love.
Oh my goodness.
And my last one for the night. A guy's at a urinal in a public restroom when a hunchback walks in and stands right next to him. He glances over and sees the hunchback has a gigantic penis. The guy says, man, if I had a dick that big, I'd be sucking it all day. And the hunchback says, how do you think I got to be a hunchback? Oh, that was bad. That's me, boys.